It was the height of beauty and excitement in Umuazara, a lively Igbo village where the annual Nwanyoma festival was in full swing. The village transformed into a vibrant runway and drummers beating out mesmerizing rhythms. Beautiful young women swayed and glided along, showing off their elegance and grace to their eager audience. With every step, their hips moved in a rhythmic sway, their feet barely touching the ground, faces gleaming with joy and cheeks tinted with soft blush. Each girl seemed to be dipped in sunlight as her skin glowed under the warm afternoon sky. The spinsters were enchanting. Their waist moved in a manner that could hypnotize any onlooker. Their gait deliberate yet effortless. They wore colorful wrappers tied at their waist, beads clinking around their necks, arms and ankles. The men watched, mouth open, as the ladies turned the runway into a parade of beauty and grace. As the festival went on, the rich young men of the village who had traveled all the way from Lagos, America and other parts of the world arrived, flashing wads of cash as if they were at an auction. And in a way, they were, because the higher a girl's bride price and marriage list, the more these men were determined to claim her as their wife. These men with their heavy wallets and even heavier egos were known as the ODOGWUS, which mean men with wealth and status. Fast forward to this present time, the global economy has taken a hit, and even the prestigious title of Odogwu was no longer as common as it once was. Many young men now run away from high bride prices and long, expensive marriage lists. In this harsh global economic meltdown, men were looking for girls whose families were more understanding of these challenging times. Only a few could afford the expensive long marriage list. And this new reality began to dawn on the villagers. Dozie, a young hard-working Igbo man from Umuazara, had come back from Ghana with dreams of finding a wife from his hometown. He wasn't rich, nor did he have the title of Odogwu, but his heart was in the right place. One sunny afternoon on his way home from an errand, Dozie spotted two very beautiful girls walking. They looked identical, almond-shaped eyes and radiant smile that could charm the sun out of hiding. Mustering his courage, he approached them and introduced himself. "Good afternoon, beautiful ladies. My name is Dozie, but my friends call me Dozie. I just came back from Ghana." The girls exchanged glances. The first girl, who looked at him with pure disgust, crossed her arms and eyed him from head to toe. "And where is your car, Mr. I just came back from Ghana?" she said sarcastically. The second girl nudged her and said,
"Obianuju, that's not nice."
She turned to Dozie with a soft smile.
"My name is Omalisha. Don't mind my sister."
Dozie chuckled nervously, scratching his head. "Nice to meet you, Omalisha, and you must be Obianuju." Obianuju let out a dramatic hiss, and as she walked away with her arms arrogantly folded, she said, "Honestly, Omalisha, I don't know why you are wasting time here. If he doesn't even have a car, then what are we talking about?" Omalisha gave Dozie an apologetic smile and said, "Please, don't mind her." Obianuju and Omalisha were twins. Obianuju, who was known around the village as Ego Yibo, meaning foreign money, had always dreamed of marrying a rich suitor from overseas. She looked down on anyone who didn't meet her standards, especially men without flashy cars. As days passed, Dozie's visit to Omalisha became more frequent. They would sit and talk, laughing together under the shade of the mango tree. They both fell in love with each other. Elder Anoka is the father of Obianuju and Omalisha, and he was even more crazy about money than Obianuju. Since his wife had passed, he had dedicated himself to protecting his daughter's value by setting their bride price absurdly high, $1 million each. Elder Anoka believed that only the few remaining wealthy Odogwus would marry his beautiful twin daughters. One day, Dozie gathered his family and went to Elder Anoka's house to formally express his interest in marrying Omalisha. The family walked the entire way, their feet dusty and tired by the time they reached the compound. Elder Anoka watched them approach, eyebrows raised in amusement, and he said, "Oh, I see you have no car. What business do I have with poverty? Any man coming to marry my daughter should arrive with a convoy of Bentleys and Mercedes-Benz, not legs. Dozie's uncle, a spirited old man with a knack for humor, replied, Elder Anoka, cars may have left us behind, but our legs are loyal. At least these legs don't run out of fuel. The villagers who had followed them for the marriage introduction burst into laughter. Elder Anoka scoffed and said, let's see how long your legs would last. My daughter deserves a multi-millionaire, an ODOGWU, not a poor family that use their legs as substitutes for cars. As Dozie and his family walked back, feeling a mix of embarrassment, Omalicha chased after him and she said,
Dozie, my love, don't mind my father. I don't need a convoy. I just want you and only you.
When Omalicha returned to her father, she made herself abundantly clear that she was going to marry Dozie and nothing in this world would change her mind. When Elder Anoka and his money-hungry daughter, Obianuju, aka Ego Igbo, could not change Omalicha's mind, crafty Elder Anoka came up with a plan. He announced that if Dozie wanted his daughter Omalicha, he would have to complete a series of 4 ridiculous challenges that would test his strength, patience, and frankly, his pride. The whole village buzzed with amusement as news spread that Dozie, the determined young man who came back from Ghana to look for a wife, had accepted Elder Anoka's bizarre challenges to win Omalicha's hand in marriage. Every villager knew Elder Anoka's reputation for mischievousness. If Dozie could overcome these challenges, Elder Anoka had promised he would let Omalicha marry him and no extravagant bride price or marriage list required. Dozie, eager to prove his love, set out on the first task, which was milking Elder Anoka's famously ill-tempered crazy cow, nicknamed Agaga. No one had ever dared milk Agaga. She was so stubborn and violent. As Dozie approached the cow with a small bucket in hand, the villagers gathered, grinning, waiting for the drama to unfold. Just be careful, Omalicha called from the background, embarrassed that her father is putting the love of her life through these ridiculous challenges, not to talk of the hazards involved. Dozie crouched beside Agaga, placing the bucket underneath. He stretched his hand out, trying to calm the cow. Just as he began to squeeze for milk, Agaga lashed out, sending a powerful kick towards Dozie. Ah, easy there, madam. I am not here to steal from you, just need a bit of milk for love's sake, Dozie whispered. Agaga's response was to kick again, and this time sending him sprawling backwards, landing right into a puddle of mud. The villagers burst into laughter. From the sidelines, Obianuju, aka Ego Igbo, whispered to her twin sister and said, Omalicha, this is the man you want to marry. Look how he's struggling with a cow, and he wants to be our in-law, she mocked. Obianuju, please keep quiet. Dozie is doing this for love, something you won't understand, Omalicha replied back, folding her arms defensively. Dozie got up, wiping mud from his body, determined not to be beaten by a mere cow. After several attempts, including a few more kicks and another tumble, he finally managed to get some milk into the bucket. The crowd erupted in cheers, though some couldn't contain their laughter. Panting and bruised, Dozie returned to Elder Anoka with a filled bucket of milk from the cow. Elder Anoka only chuckled, clearly disappointed that Dozie had managed to pull it off. You think you have done well, eh? Alright, Dozie, here is your second task, Elder Anoka sneered. You must fill 10 buckets of, let's call it special fertilizer from the village latrines and spread it across my farm as manure. I am sure a city boy like you isn't used to getting your hands dirty. The villagers gasped when they heard this second challenge of getting human dung from the toilet for manure on Elder Anoka's farm. Omalicha's face turned red with embarrassment. Even she hadn't expected her father to go this far. But Dozie, though hesitant, steeled himself, determined not to back down. As Dozie marched towards the village latrines to fetch the 10 buckets, laughter followed him. He pulled out his first bucket and dipped it into one of the large latrine pits. The smell hit him like a punch and he staggered backwards, coughing. This must be what love smells like, Dozie muttered to himself, holding his nose and steadying himself. He carried the heavy bucket towards Elder Anoka's farmland, his every step wobbling, his face twisted in disgust. Villagers giggled and pointed at him, amused at the sight of a grown man fetching buckets of shit just to marry a woman. Halfway through his 7th bucket, Dozie slipped, his foot landing in a particularly slippery spot. Before he could catch himself, he plunged headfirst into the bucket, his face submerged in the bucket of special fertilizer. His shouts echoed across the farm as he struggled to free himself, his nose wrinkling from the awful stench. The villagers, now practically rolling on the ground with laughter, cheered him on, shouting words of encouragement. "Dozie, my guy, remember it's for love," one villager yelled, clutching his stomach from laughing. When Dozie finally finished spreading the manure, he stumbled back to Elder Anoka's house, his clothes, face and pride thoroughly coated in the special fertilizer. Elder Anoka feigned a sympathetic look, though his eyes sparkled with glee. "Very well, Dozie, 2 tasks done. I am impressed, but I have something truly special for you next," Elder Anoka said, hiding a devilish smile. Before Dozie could respond, a luxurious convoy of cars rolled into Elder Anoka's compound, announcing the arrival of Ezekash, a wealthy businessman from Umuazara village who is based in Malaysia. He was loud, boastful, and his English was a mix of broken phrases and heavy Igbo accents. He swaggered out of his Rolls Royce, flaunting his gold chains. Ezekash came because he is interested in marrying the twins, Omalicha and Obianuju. When he saw Dozie with the latrine buckets, he said to him, "Ah, who be that poor boy struggling with latrine buckets?" Ezekash shouted, glancing at Dozie with disdain. He continued and said, "And I hear you want to marry Omalicha? Haha, my friend, go and work small before you think of marrying fine woman like that." Ego Ibo was so excited at the sight of Ezekash. She whispered loudly to Omalicha, "See the kind of man we should marry. Rich and powerful and can afford any bride price. A real Odogo. Leave this Dozie, come and join me with Ezekash. We can be co-wives. He says he wants to marry the 2 of us." Omalicha shot her twins with a disgusted look and said, "Never. I don't care about his money. Dozie may not have as much, but he has a good heart." Unfazed, Ego Ibo turned and walked towards Ezekash, patting her eyelashes and walking seductively towards him as he smiles at her.
"You like what you see? You like what you see?"
Elder Anoka, sensing a potential big payday, immediately started talking to Ezekash, discussing the value of his daughters and hinting that they would require a substantial bride price and marriage list. Elder Anoka and his money-obsessed daughter, Obianuju, aka Ego Ibo, had seen enough. They watched with growing frustration as Dozie, bruised but still determined, stumbled through each challenge, refusing to back down from their ridiculous trials. Ego Ibo, ever the schemer, conspired with her father to come up with the perfect trap, one so challenging and dangerous it might finally put Dozie out of the picture of marrying Omalicha. For the 3rd task, Dozie would climb the Iroko tree and retrieve honey straight from a beehive, all without any protection. The bees around these parts were notoriously aggressive, and it was no secret in the village that this was Elder Anoka and Ego Ibo's latest plan to send Dozie back to Ghana. On the day of the challenge, Dozie took a deep breath and climbed the tree with resolve, despite the villagers warning him to reconsider. As he reached the top, the buzzing sound grew louder and more threatening. With a quick, careful motion, he took hold of the honeycomb. The bees swarmed instantly, stinging his face, arms, and necks as he scrambled down the tree. "Run, Dozie, run!" shouted the crowd, half laughing and half worried. He barely made it down before the bees chased him in all directions, darting around his head, stinging his hand as he squatted frantically, stumbling in circles. The villagers roared with laughter, doubling over as Dozie zigzagged through the field, eventually diving headfirst into a nearby stream to shake off the persistent bees. "This young man is really determined to marry this girl," one villager shouted, amazed at Dozie's resilience. When Dozie finally emerged, covered in welts but proudly holding the honeycomb, the villagers applauded his persistence. It was now obvious to Elder Anoka and his daughter, Ego Ibo, that Dozie is hell-bent on marrying Omalicha, so they changed plans and decided to convince Ezekash to marry only Ego Ibo because Ezekash actually wanted to marry the twins at the same time. So in order to fully convince him to go ahead and marry only Obianuju, aka Ego Ibo, Elder Anoka sent his daughter Obianuju to go over to Ezekash's house and show him what he would enjoy if he goes ahead and marry her. That night, Ego Ibo, dressed in a tight, skimpy outfit that left nothing to imagination, sneaked over to Ezekash's mansion in the village. Her goal was clear. If she could win over the rich businessman with her charms, he might be tempted to marry her fast and pay the hefty $1 million for marriage list and bride price. Ezekash, who was well known for his flashy lifestyle and loud manners, was instantly mesmerized when he saw Ego Ibo at his house. "Ah, see as you fine well, Wanyoma," Ezekash exclaimed as he ogled Ego Ibo from head to toe. Ego Ibo giggled, playing her part to perfection. They spent the night together in bed, with Ego Ibo believing that this was the beginning of her future as Mrs. Ezekash. Over the following days, she continued to visit him, offering herself freely in the hope that he would move to propose soon. But Ezekash, being the cunning man he was, enjoyed the free benefits without any commitment. Meanwhile, Elder Anoka delivered his final challenge to Dozie. He must bathe a filthy pig in front of the entire village, making sure to get it clean in under 10 minutes. Elder Anoka came up with this last challenge, simply to humiliate Dozie. The villagers gathered eagerly, having never seen anyone attempt to bathe a pig before. Dozie, though exhausted and bruised, rolled up his sleeves and accepted the task. The pig, a large and feisty animal, had no intention of cooperating. Every time Dozie tried to scrub it, the pig would break free, squealing and darting around, sending mud flying everywhere. "Hold them tight, Dozie," one villager shouted, clearly amused. Dozie chased the pig in circles, sliding and stumbling, barely holding onto the soap and bucket as he tried to catch it again. The villagers were rolling in laughter as they watched him wrestle the slippery pig while mud splattered on his body. Every time he thought he had the pig under control, the pig would slip from his grasp and sprint away from him. Dozie finally managed to corner the pig and give it a good scrub. By the end, he was covered in mud himself, but he had somehow managed to get the pig clean enough to pass the challenge. The crowd cheered, clapping and chanting his name. "Dozie, Dozie, Dozie." With the final task completed, Dozie paid a modest bride price to Elder Anoka as they had initially agreed. A traditional wedding was organized, and nearly the whole village showed up to celebrate the union, eagerly recounting the wild challenges Dozie had endured for the love of Omalicha. After the ceremony, Dozie took his bride and traveled all the way back to Ghana. Meanwhile, back in the village, Elder Anoka and Ego Ibo grew increasingly nervous. Ezekash, once promising and eager, had gradually lost interest in Ego Ibo's charms. Then one day, the villagers heard shocking news. Ezekash had secretly married another girl from the neighboring town of Umuozara, and according to reports, he did not pay any expensive bride price or fulfill any long marriage list. The news was devastating for Elder Anoka and Obianuju. Ego Yibo, humiliated and abandoned, soon discovered she was pregnant with Ezeka's child, a scandal that brought shame upon their household. Left with no choice, she stayed indoors, avoiding the prying eyes and whispers of the villagers. Her dreams of wealth and grandeur shattered. Months later, a shiny SUV rolled into the village. Everyone was attracted to the fine car. The villagers quickly recognized the couple inside. It was Dozie and a glowing pregnant Omalicha. Word spread like wildfire, and soon a crowd gathered to follow the car all the way to Elder Anoka's compound. Dozie parked and stepped out, helping his wife out of the vehicle. Elder Anoka, eyes wide with surprise and regret, knelt down instantly, bowing his head in shame, and said, "My son, I am sorry for all I put you through." Elder Anoka looked up at Dozie with sincere regret. Ego Yibo, drawn out by the commotion in front of her father's compound, appeared in the doorway, her belly visibly swollen. She ran to her twin sister Omalisha and hugged her, their bellies protruding as they were both pregnant. Obianuju said with tears in her eyes, "Please forgive me, Omalicha." And Omalicha replied,
"There is nothing to forgive."
And they both cried. The villagers watched and were touched by the scene. It was clear that Dozie's love and resilience had won the day. With the love of his life by his side, he had gone back to Ghana and he became successful in business. Chidozie had proven that true love, not money, was what truly mattered. The entire Umuozara village had learned a valuable lesson, realizing that while wealth may fade, genuine love endures every test and triumphs over materialism.